Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Wednesday, December 21st. This is Africa 54.
The COP27 Environment Summit in Egypt set up a fund for richer nations to help countries slammed by climate change. Henry Wilkins reports on its importance from Niger. Tigray is under truce, but the damage caused by conflict has left the region shattered, as VOA's Ndiho details. Republic of Congo President Denis Sassou Nguesso tells VOA's Mariama Diallo what the recent U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit accomplished. All this and much more on today's Africa 54.
We begin in West Africa, where the Loss and Damage Fund, agreed to last month at the COP27 Climate Conference, aims for rich nations to help those that have borne the brunt of their global warming emissions. In Niger, climate change is fueling desertification and conflict as communities compete for dwindling resources. Henry Wilkins visits a community that is demonstrating how more funding can make a difference and speaks to the country's environment minister.
It's often said those least responsible for climate change will suffer the most because of it. This is especially true in Niger. According to non-profits such as Concern International, Niger, along with its Sahelian neighbours, is likely to see a 3 to 6 degrees Celsius increase in temperatures by the end of the century, with devastating impacts for one of the poorest and most difficult to farm regions on Earth. Yet in 2021, Niger produced just 0.007% of global emissions. The changing climate is also adding to a rise in militant groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, according to the UN.
Climate change is contributing to the deterioration of natural resources, with population competing then for the safe natural resources that are shrinking. So there is a direct relation between climate change and security.
To help countries like Niger, a loss and damage fund was agreed upon at the UN's recent COP27 climate conference in Egypt. In theory, richer countries and bigger emitters of greenhouse gases will pay to assist the countries suffering from climate change the most. Non-profits say the cost of the damage caused by climate change could hit $1.8 trillion by 2050. Niger's Environment Minister told VOA the fund needs to become operational quickly.
There is an urgency to make the funds operational. Not only making the funds operational, but also the urgency to make the funds available through an easy funding mechanism that favors countries such as Niger.
Hawa Koba Magade lives in a village in Niger's border region with Nigeria, an area that could benefit from the fund. A project run by the UN's World Food Programme has reorganised the village's farming practices, allowing them to farm during the dry season in addition to the rainy season.
Food production has increased. The older and younger generations of the village no longer have to go elsewhere to find work since we can farm twice a year. It's an improvement because there is now not only enough food to survive, but also enough to sell.
In a neighbouring village where there is no assistance, a farmer says they do not have enough to eat. Environmentalists say that details such as how the fund will work and how the money will make it to villages like those in Zinder need to be nailed down.
The political pitfalls are developing states just decide not to pay. And it's hard when you want to get governments to write that check. It's difficult to get them to do it, particularly in the economic climate that we face globally now.
The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change declined to give an interview on how the fund might work and how long it may take to become active. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Zinder, Niger.
A fragile truce is allowing partial access to Tigray, where months of conflict have caused immense harm, leaving hospitals damaged, while water, electricity, and medicines are in short supply. Ndiho has more.
A ceasefire deal in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region has raised cautious hope among millions impacted by the bloody two-year conflict. Secretary General Antonio Guterres, during his final press conference this year, noted that the ceasefire agreement between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF rebels was a positive development.
In Ethiopia, efforts by the African Union to broker peace are a reason for hope. A cessation of hostilities and implementation agreements are in place. A pathway to assistance in the northern part of the country is emerging.
Many civilians are reflecting on the terrible losses they suffered and are looking to promised aid to rebuild their lives after a war that has killed thousands, displaced millions, and left hundreds of thousands facing famine. Footage from the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, showed damaged hospitals, while water, electricity, and medicines were in short supply.
Today, in fact, we were able to bring in the first big convoy of trucks, 16 trucks with 200 metric tons of food and medicine, which will be prioritized to the healthcare facilities in northwestern and central Tigray.
Internally displaced persons who fled the region said they had traveled far without water or food. However, the fragile Truce has now allowed partial access to relief aid to avert a potential health crisis. The ICRC and the Ethiopian Red Cross Society are conducting rapid assessments and supporting 27 hospitals and health centers with emergency medical supplies for first aid, surgery, food, water, and hygiene kits. The Ethiopian government has repeatedly denied blocking humanitarian supplies to Tigray. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Republic of Congo President Denis Sassou Nguesso says significant developments came out of this year's U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington. Nguesso, who is also the chairperson of the African Union High-Level Committee in Libya, called the world's attention toward resolving the political crisis in the North African nation. He sat down with VOA correspondent Mariama Diallo in this exclusive interview.
Last week, Republic of Congo President Denis Sassou Nguesso attended the second U.S.-Africa Leaders Gathering. In an exclusive interview, he told VOA that this time around the goals were more defined, including helping the African Union gain a greater voice at the United Nations.
Je donne quelques exemples.
For example, President Biden declared that Africa is certainly going to be a member of the G20. I believe this is a clear orientation that we appreciate. Mr. Biden also declared that in the next few years, America is going to get involved with Africa, finding its right place at the Security Council of the United Nations as a permanent member.
The G20 comprises the world's major industrial and emerging economies. South Africa is currently its only African member. President Joe Biden also said his administration will spend $55 billion to help African countries over the next 3 years.
With this summit and with the African Union's Agenda 2063, our eyes are fixed squarely on the future.
That's also an important development, especially when the debate allowed us to highlight Africa's priorities. President Macky Sall, the African Union president, and all the other leaders emphasized Africa's priorities, whether it's related to basic infrastructure, developing the agriculture sector, digital, education, health, the energy question.
The White House said $165 million will be used to strengthen democracy and good governance. Yet some criticized Biden for inviting leaders who have been in power for a long time. U.S. officials said all leaders in good standing with the African Union and the U.S. got an invite.
Democracy and good governance are a process, and even today in certain countries in Europe, there are challenges. Even here in the U.S., we were surprised to see what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. There is lots of progress in Africa. Now, as for the leaders who have stayed in power for a long time, what if that was the will of the people? Elections are meant to ask people to share their opinions. What if the people vote in favor of stability?
Some African countries have seen a recurrence of coups, and in the case of Libya, chronic conflict. Sassou Nguesso said without peace and security, development can't be achieved.
Tant qu'on n'aura pas bien résolu,
As long as we don't resolve the Libya issue, we won't see the light at the end of the tunnel in the Sahel region. So the terrorism and violent extremism in Africa, the problem related to peace in general, is an important one. As the chairperson of the AU's high-level committee on Libya, we are in the process of organizing a reconciliation forum there.
Libya has had little peace since the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that ousted Muammar Gaddafi. Sassou Nguesso has been in and out of power for over 3 decades. Asked if he's going to be a candidate at the next elections, he says at the moment he's trying to execute the programs he was elected for. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Washington.
The UN Security Council is easing a weapons embargo meant to stem rebel fighting in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and renewed a peacekeeping mission there for another year. However, arms sales to non-governmental armed groups are still banned. The Security Council says the situation in Congo continues to be a threat to international peace and security in the region. There has been a surge in fighting between the Congolese army and M23. A recent report titled Gatumba Survivors Project gives insight into what happened on August 13, 2004, and why Congo must rid itself of armed militia groups. Joining me live via Skype from Clark University in Massachusetts is Chris Davey, a professor of genocide studies and genocide prevention. He is also the lead researcher for the Gatumba Survivors Project. Chris, welcome to Africa 54.
Hi, Esther. Thanks for having me.
Now, there have been so many deaths in Central Africa, most of them caused by human conflict. What prompted you to document the Gatumba massacre in particular?
Yeah, my work on Gatumba emerged out of research with Congolese Tutsi, particularly Banyamulenge soldiers who've been involved and have participated in this conflict since the mid-1990s. And many of those soldiers cited the massacre at Gatumba in 2004 as a direct personal reason or an indirect symbolic reason for why they decided to participate in armed conflict.
Tell us what you heard from survivors.
The message I heard from survivors really sits around 2 important issues. One is around justice for what happened to them and justice for a conflict that continues to impact their community in the highlands of South Kivu and Eastern Congo. The other issue is around being able to find resilience and sort of internal community reconciliation for what happened to them as a group. And so as I speak with survivors, they talk particularly about how to deal with trauma, how to bear witness to the experiences of violence that they've had, and how they do that as a community.
Have those responsible for this massacre been held accountable yet?
No, most certainly, and this is typical with many other countries in the region. And so those responsible for this massacre in particular are connected with militias, former and current, in both Burundi and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The leader of the particular group, Agathon Rwasa, still sits as an opposition politician in Burundi, has previously been a deputy speaker of parliament, but is suspected for a variety of crimes, not least Gatumba, but certainly including the recruitment and use of child soldiers, other massacres, and other crimes during the Burundian civil war.
Chris, as we mentioned, there have been so many human conflicts in that region. What can the Congolese diaspora do here and the Congolese people back in the country to end this kind of ethnic clashes?
Yeah, this is a really important question. So as I speak with people in the diaspora and in my research in the region as well, I think there's a huge role for diasporas to either inflame conflict or to build into peaceful efforts of trying to resolve conflicts or to open up dialogue in particular. And so that's something that I've seen amongst Congolese diaspora groups here in the US, is that there are attempts to try and start these kind of conversations and narratives and discussions together about what has happened in the past and how they can work together as different communities, but as Congolese communities, to try and push for accountability and for peace building in the country itself.
Chris, thank you so much for working on that project and for your insight into this story. Chris Davey is a professor of genocide studies and genocide prevention and the lead researcher for the Gatumba Survivors Project. Germany has returned 20 historic bronze sculptures to Nigeria as part of efforts to address its dark colonial past. Anna Lindebrock, Germany's foreign minister, returned the prized cultural artifacts to Nigerian officials in Abuja. The sculptures, known as Benin bronzes, were looted from the West African country when it was under colonial rule. Cast in brass and bronze with ancient designs, the sculptures were used in rituals to honor the Benin people, ancestors and rulers. Thousands of artifacts are estimated to have been stolen from Nigeria by England. Most of the treasures were stolen from the royal palace of the Kingdom of Benin, now part of southern Nigeria, and some ended up in the custody of other foreign governments, including Germany.
I think as Germans and Europeans, we should really pause for a moment and reflect on what this actually means. What it means not to have crucial part of your history with you, but to have it taken from you. What would it mean to us to be deprived of our cultural heritage? Not to be able to marvel the Gutenberg Bible in Mainz, to be unable to admire Martin Luther's writings, to stand in front of a sculpture by Käthe Kollwitz in Berlin, or at Goethe's desk in Weimar. To you here in Nigeria, however, this loss has been your reality for your whole life. Today, we are here to return the Benin bronzes to where they belong, to the people of Nigeria.
So clearly, Germany is a very, very important partner for our country. Myself and Her Excellency had very important and useful discussions where we also looked at the various areas of our cooperation, and in particular, with energy transition, amongst other issues, and security and humanitarian issues. So it's really been a visit that we thank you for, and look forward to building on this relationship between our two countries.
Nigerian authorities have in recent years intensified its efforts to get the looted artifacts returned. Earlier this year, Germany pledged to repatriate more than 1,000 of them in the coming years. Still to come in our tech report, artificial intelligence makes its way into technologies. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's on tap for Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, what was accomplished at the US-Africa Leaders Summit? The United States plans to invest $55 billion in Africa over the next 3 years and support a greater role for the continent at the G20 and the UN Security Council. Join me, Heidi Adams, and my guests as we examine America's renewed engagement with African countries on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, former Sudanese leader Omar al-Bashir told a court Tuesday that he takes full responsibility for the events in 1989 that brought him to power. Bashir spoke at a trial in which he stands charged with leading a military coup. The former head of Cameroon state TV and radio station, Amadou Vamoulk, was handed a 12-year term for graft Wednesday after spending more than 6 years in custody. Vamoulk was found guilty of illegally giving himself holiday pay worth $25,000 in 2005 and 2006. And the World Bank is releasing $100 million for Zambia amid substantial delays in its debt restructuring efforts as its creditors drag their feet. Bank President David Malpass says Zambia urgently needs debt relief to restore medium-term debt sustainability and attract the new investment needed for growth and jobs. Ethiopian Airlines chief executive says he has high hopes that the national carrier is on track to recover to pre-pandemic levels in its financial year ending in June. Olivia Chan has details.
Ethiopian Airlines Chief Executive Tasso Bekele said the company expects its passenger business to recover to pre-pandemic levels in its financial year ending in June. Africa's biggest carrier will ferry 12.7 million passengers during the year, he added, up from 8.6 million passengers in the previous financial year and 12.1 million before the global health crisis struck. Masfin attributed the forecast to the carrier's own expansion of new planes and destinations and a peace deal signed last month to end a 2-year conflict in the north of the country.
And at the same time, increase the number of passengers we carry and cargo we transport. But at the same time, as countries more open up, relax the restrictions, it will allow the passenger traffic to grow.
Masfin said any delays in reopening of China could, however, curb the projections, since it is a key market for both passengers and cargo. Ethiopian fared much better than other African carriers during the global health crisis, thanks to its cargo business that was able to compensate for a steep drop in passenger traffic. It is already looking beyond the health crisis with an expansion plan to double its fleet and network, boost annual revenue and passengers by 400% and 440% respectively by 2035, something Masfin says is important.
Unless we grow, we cannot be successful in our endeavors. That is why we are expanding our operation.
Olivia Chan of Reuters filed that report. It's time for our technology report, and joining us now is our tech reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther, thank you. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is gradually making its way into technologies such as advanced storytelling, visualization, events forecasting, performance tracking, and collaboration, which are being deployed to enhance performance in Africa's procurement marketplace. In Kenya, Zixtova uses AI to transform business operations management and planning that drive real impact. Joining me in studio is Bramel Mwawa, founder and chief executive officer of the Nairobi-based Zixtova. Hello, welcome to Africa 54.
Hi, Paul. Thank you.
So tell us, what is Zixtova all about?
So our work is simply to make intelligence available for the continent to make informed decisions. So, and this means in terms of how financing, how risk is handled, how healthcare is managed. We don't have as many resources as every other place in the continent, which doesn't mean we don't have conventional resources, but we have other resources that could be used differently. So our work is simply to make information available, and we use technology and data science and AI to do that.
How are people embracing that?
So technically, a solution is a solution, and if it fixes a problem, then it's going to be embraced. So our work really hasn't been pushing technology. Our work is using technology to build actual, meaningful, impactful solutions, to drive corporate decision-making, corporate leadership, and even government services. And we've gotten traction. For 3 years, we've actually achieved a lot.
So if I hear you correctly, you seem to suggest that you're actually bringing technology into the mix here. But a lot of people on the continent are sort of not up to speed when it comes to embracing some of these technologies, especially when you talk about AI. What's so different with the kind of technology you bring to the table?
Yeah, so there's an assumption that technology is not adopted in the continent. That's not true. It's technology that doesn't fit the continent is what doesn't get adopted, because we create our own technology. Talk of mobile money, it's best in Africa. Talk about different sets of technology, they actually have traction. It's just context. So we build technology with context. Technology that actually works in the continent, that is mindful of the continent's context, and that's simply what we solve. So we build things that can be used for Africa, and that actually makes entire difference in terms of technology adaptability.
When it comes to your daily day-to-day operations, doing this, going around the continent, trying to pitch some of these ideas, what comes into mind? How are leaders or people who run these organizations tapping into this because you bring solutions to the table.
Yeah, so I think it's just the mindfulness that Africa is not just, because of its size, it doesn't mean that we don't have capability to spend. We just need things that actually make sense to us. Other than spending $2 million on a piece of technology that I'm only going to use 30% of it, it doesn't make sense. I might as well spend the same $1 million on a piece of technology that I can use 120% to create more value and more value. If that technology is put on the table, it's not even the technology put on the table, the solution put on the table, it will get traction. There's value because it will create impact, and that impact will have a dividend which will result to affordability of that technology. So I don't think there is a problem with adoption of technology in the continent. It's just which technology are we talking about?
You bring up a very good point. You talk about the type of technologies on the continent, but there is also competition. How are you dealing with the likes of Google, the likes of let's say IBM? These are people who are tapping Oracle, people who are tapping into the same thing that you're trying to do.
So we are not really competitors, and looking at probably people like Oracle, IBM, and the rest, they play a different game. Our work actually makes their work makes their work better. For instance, the work that Zetova does, it simply makes the work of Oracle and IBM 10 times more valuable because our work is simply make data make sense. Their systems make data, capture data, ERP systems and all that stuff. But our work simply makes data make sense. The more people use our technology, the more value it creates for them. So we are sort of the middleware, the complementing partner that makes technology relevant to everyday life. So simply, it's not really competition. We are the context people. We make technology have context on the continent. So that's what makes us very important.
Very briefly, you are here as part of the African Leaders Summit. Were you able to engage with the African leaders, and were they receptive to some of the things that you're trying to push on the continent?
Yes, we were invited to basically share our stories and to engage with several leaders. And I think it's more of just the awareness that there is actually local companies like Zetova that could actually do what we are doing. And that has been a highlight for us.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much. Brimel Maro is the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Zetova, based in Nairobi, Kenya. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you, Paul. Be sure to join Paul every Wednesday for another tech segment right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. We invite you to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.